live. Hi, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Ted, Tucker, Kylie, Adam. Welcome, everybody. Don't be nervous, you guys. We have we're up to 1.2 million people that watch this every week. And so don't be too intimidated. Just speak your mind, be yourselves. It's on a loop.
I thought you were going to say 1.2 people watch this per week.
Yeah, we have 1.2. Multiply the amount of people that we have here, and it's 1.2, and that's we're probably about the same. So we are linked. We're live on LinkedIn. Okay, we're using StreamYard, and StreamYard is awesome. We've been doing this. My brother and I, Matt, love you, bro. He cannot make it. He's about 30,000 feet in the air. The only thing keeping him from here, but we're on episode number 44 of this podcast that eventually found its name, and it's We'll Move podcast with me and my brother. I'm in Charlotte. He's normally up in Boston, Massachusetts area. So we are to all of our millions of fans out there. We're on LinkedIn Live. This is also streaming on YouTube Live. And then we have a couple Facebook channels through Hospiamo. So it's my brother's company, Agile Game Changers, very much in the tech world and talent acquisition and training. And then I'm in the hotel and hospitality industry. So our worlds collide, and this is what we talk about. And so the thing that everybody has had in common is that we have identified people that have done something, created something, done something unique, or want to do something unique, and just wanted to create this place where you feel a sense of belonging and to ask questions. And people that are watching, and I'll keep an eye on it, if you are watching this on LinkedIn Live, and we do have 20 or 30 attendees that come on every now and again, you all are welcome to make comments, and usually my brother keeps an eye on it, but I will keep an eye on it. So if you type in a question or a comment, we'll respond to it and make you feel very uncomfortable by saying your name to our millions of fans. Cool. So Tucker, Kylie, Ted, thank you for spending the time. I'm Adam. We all have something in common, which I think is pretty cool. We're in very different places on the planet. I'm in North Carolina. Ted, you're in New Jersey. Kylie, you are in the Cayman Islands. Tucker, you're in the Arizona area, right? So we got beaches. We've got the North Carolina mountains. We've got the desert, and we have New Jersey.
We have air quality.
Nice. All right. So we're talking. So I've had the privilege of getting to know Ted for it's over 15 years. We've been friends. We are former coworkers, longtime friends, 15 plus years. He was with me we were working together when both of my kids were born up in New Jersey, and I've been here in Charlotte for since 2010. And so and then Tucker, we met about a year ago or so. I think that we hooked up on LinkedIn, where a lot of the people that have come on this podcast, we do get to know through LinkedIn, because I think it's an awesome thing. I am on LinkedIn all the time. It's allowed me to stay in touch with people like Ted, even though we move around the country and stuff. And then Kylie, we got 45 days under the belt from knowing each other, and we've already done a LinkedIn Live podcast together. That was awesome. We got to know each other even more. The other thing that connects us all is through the Super Bloom community on school.com. And if you want to learn more about that, you can reach out to me, adam@hospiamo.com. But we're really excited about it. And thank you all for joining that community. Kylie, thank you very much you have your own community called, it's not called Service with a Smile. It is.
I think it is. Service
Yeah.
with a Smile. Yes, it is.
Service with a Smile. And we found each other on there, and we're kind of learning and giving and sharing together. And that's been very exciting. That's a wonderful environment to be in. It's gonna hopefully have the same vibe, which is a place to belong, place to be yourself. We have high school students. We have a 72-year-old like grandfather on there. So it's cool. So we're working on all that. All right. So the topic of today, right? The term influencer, okay, I think is one of those terms that are, it could possibly be like the Webster's Dictionary word of the year, maybe last year or this year. It seems like I hear that word at least once a day. And what is that? Let me ask you what you think that means. And then I'm going to play a video or play a quick stand-up comedy routine that's like a minute. It just made me laugh. And I'm referring to her as like an influencer. But Ted, influencer.
I mean, I hate to use the root word in the definition, but I think anybody in any space that's influencing sort of in any way. We think of it sort of online and but I think that can be in any space that you're doing that.
Trying to move something, right? Trying to influence
Yeah.
a decision, or even influence someone to get out of bed and go to school on time. It could be it could be an influencer and do that. What about Tucker? What do you think? Well, let me ask you, Ted, do you consider yourself an influencer?
I would never introduce myself as an influencer. I don't feel comfortable doing that, and nothing against anybody who does. Yeah. I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. But being a hospitality leader, and I guess I am. So I think I would consider myself that.
Yeah, I think somebody can say that you're or anybody's like a trainer or a leader, but you also don't like saying like, oh yeah, I'm a leader. I'm Ted Borsick. I'm Adam Zambruski. I'm a leader. But you could be a leader of leaders, right? And then or a trainer of trainers, and you're influencing. So Tucker, what do you think about that term influencer, and are you one?
I like Ted's definition there. And I also agree. I would never introduce myself as an influencer. I think the way I think about influencers, it's somebody whose impact is felt. And it's much more what you do and the way that you behave than anything that you say. And so I think it's flattering perhaps to be called an influencer, in the same way that it's flattering that somebody would call you a leader, right? But they're calling you that because of what you do and the way that you behave. It's nothing that you necessarily say. When I think of influencer, I think of somebody on social media who has a big following. And I think the way in the restaurant industry we use influencers is as like a marketing tool, right? They have a big following. They come into your restaurant and they eat your food, and then their influence hopefully brings in people to eat. And so I think in a transactional sense, that's what influencer actually means. But perhaps in the way that we're going to talk about it today, I think it's along the same lines of being a leader and your impact being felt in the spaces that you're in.
I like that. Yeah, impact you've used a couple times. That's a big word to kind of gauge the influence, right? Kylie, what do you think?
I think it stacks with our answers, so I love it collectively. I think Tucker saying about the transactional phase of it, that versus purpose, I think is powerful. There is the traditional certain generation of influencers that you can buy the dress that I'm wearing right now off of whatever shop and use my code, and I'm influencing you to shop, which is the marketing aspect. But truthfully, like Ted said, like we're all leaders in our own way. Even if we don't have the title of manager, you have an opportunity to make a positive impact on someone else if they cross your path. So even if you're just walking down the street, and this goes in from Service with a Smile, so this is my lens, but you have an opportunity to make an impact with that simple tool in your pocket with a smile. And I think it's also that if you're not sure how you can be an influencer, is thinking of the term subject matter expert. So each of us come within hospitality, whether it's restaurants or hotels or other service-based organizations. It can be kind of anywhere depending on what your background is, and doesn't have to be your college degree, but what sets your soul on fire, what is that calling that you can confidently write a book about without overthinking or without having to go to school to study for. Like, what is your topic of interest, or your subject matter interest, you're making influence on that topic. So just in the room alone, the four of us, we cover, yes, hospitality, big blanket of the umbrella, but each individual one of us can contribute in our own unique way and positively influence other people who are listening and resonate with them in our own colors and location and tone and all the things attached.
I like that. I keep writing down keywords, and you guys are so good with explaining that, because that's it just has a blanket meaning, right? And it's if you influence, you influence. I think being a dad, I think, is and being a good friend generally, I think, though, and a husband, those three things are like where I would like to spend all my time. Okay. But I do work and stuff. And so being an employer, I think, is right up there with the level of responsibility that one has. Like, being somebody's supervisor is highly influential. And Tucker, good point. It's not always the words that you say. They watch you, and you can influence them just by, maybe it's your level of confidence, maybe it's your level of, or lack of confidence, and your humility, or your vulnerability, or a funny joke that you told, or something like that. So speaking of a funny joke, that was a nice little segue. I'm going to play one. We're going to have a little laugh, and then I'm going to ask you about it. I hope that it all comes through, but it's a very quick one. She's a stand-up comedian. Her name is Regina DeCiccio. And I found this on a YouTube short, and I found this to be absolutely hilarious and relevant to our conversation. Hold on.
Did you know there's no plunger in a hotel toilet? So if you're staying in a hotel and you have a situation, you have to call down to the front desk. You have to call down the front desk. So it happened to me once, and I was like, oh, hey, like, I'm having a little problem. And she goes, oh, you can just come to the lobby and get a plunger. I was like, oh, can I? I can just go to the lobby and get a plunger and then walk back to my room? Right, like all Game of Thrones, like, shame, shame, shame.
Oops. I was just looking. I just randomly typed in something in YouTube yesterday when I knew you all were going to come in. I said, funny hotel comedian or something like that. And she was the first one that popped up. And I was like, you know what? That's perfect. I like that you have a situation. We use words to in our world to euphemize. So you think that was funny? That was good.
I tore it apart from a service standards of excellence perspective. Is the goal for a 5-star hotel or dining experience is to not make the guest work too much or think too hard. And if your guest is taking the time and the initiative to report that they need assistance, maybe with engineering or maintenance to come plunge or something, that to ask them to come down to the front desk requires them a lot of work and embarrassment, and does not anticipate their needs or even fulfill their expressed wishes. So it's a funny comedian thing, but I poke holes in it from the process perspective, and it could be a good realistic role play scenario for room for improvement.
That's a good point. A great role play scenario, even to play that with your teams. So Kylie, you're at a hotel, a beautiful hotel, the Kimpton Seafire Resort in the Cayman Islands. Very luxury, beautiful place to be. So when you and I spoke about a month ago or so, the theme that kind of popped up naturally was, and I shared my opinion on a later show, was that I started in kind of Four Diamond Resort Casino, and I was taught these basics of, call it luxury, or just really do whatever it takes to take care of the guests, a lot of empathy, a lot of, and then I moved on in my career and I went into like full service hotels, but then I eventually found my way into select service hotels. Loved it. It was meaning like the Courtyard Marriotts, the Hilton Garden Inns of the world, the Residence Inns. But I saw that the guest expectations were different when they stayed at one of my courtyards versus when they would stay at like a luxury Marriott or like even Foxwoods, who I always mention on here. They gave you my start in the business up in Connecticut. So it wasn't, I did not have any difference. Like I loved serving guests. I loved building teams and communicating every day, but I saw that the expectations of the guests were different. And I would regularly say like, I can do that for you, right? Like if you want a special, I don't know, a dozen roses sent up to your room, just because we're a limited service or select service doesn't mean I can't do that. So, and then Tucker, you're mostly in the restaurant industry as far as your experience, right? And you started a company, the Sustain Network, and I love your stuff on LinkedIn. So please, everyone, you're watching this is on LinkedIn Live. So look them up on LinkedIn. You can look up. Let me make sure I mention this. So Kylie Ray Fitzgerald on LinkedIn, or Kylie Ray of Sunshine on Instagram. She created her own training program, and it's called Service with a Smile, and it's awesome. And congratulations on creating that. Tucker, you started your own company based on your. You got to check out Tucker on LinkedIn. I know it's probably easy for you, but your videos and your influence on LinkedIn, I think, is really cool, man. I love how you've done this transcript. It's very short little videos. You write a nice message on there, and I see it all the time. It pops up all the time. So please check out Tucker on LinkedIn, or find him on the Sustain Network. And we're going to talk a little bit about your philosophies, the things that you and I have both kind of agreed on that could be improved about our industry. So Ted, you're up in New Jersey, managing a hotel. You've got a background that I find to be awesome and unique. Ted's a film director. Ted's you have been. You've written plays. You've directed plays. Ted, I've said to many people, probably without you even hearing, that you're the funniest guy that I've ever worked with. I think our sense of humor was like probably not good to be like working together all the time, but we but it's very similar. And you caught me at a time when I had, I think, just kind of met my wife, or we just got married, and so we were starting our family. Our kids are in similar ages, but the idea of working in a hotel together with someone that you really like and you have fun with, I do get a little judgmental about our industry and the things that we can do better, but I love my industry. I love hotels and restaurants and service, right? So, but I'm not too quiet about the things, my opinions. And so I'm a little concerned. And Tucker, I made mention to how you and I share an opinion. So tell me a little bit about that. And I'm a little concerned with one example, which I think was the first thing that you and I talked about. And that was the example of a hiring manager interviewing a candidate and then eventually deciding to hire that person. And then that person starts working at company XYZ. And then what happened to the hiring manager, or the person interviewing to that person that was the person that initially connected with the candidate? Usually that person you don't even talk to again, because they're out interviewing more people, or and now their person is working with someone that they may or may not love to be around, who knows. But the culture of talking to someone at the first interview, God, it's so impactful to the future of the experience at working at a restaurant or a hotel, or even an event management or a venue. So what's up with the Sustain Network? What makes that different? I think if I remember, it was based on, that kind of feeling that we could do better with that.
Yeah, we specialize in workforce culture design, and leadership development. And you can't have one without the other, truthfully. So I think what you're referring to was probably the first conversation we ever had, where it's that experience. I definitely experienced it operating a franchise that I operated a few years ago, overseeing an area. And, you know, every store kind of has their own unique culture, right? And so a frustration that I would have would be interviewing and setting the tone with somebody and using these amazing materials that we had to shine the company in a certain light that was true to the founder's intention and what we wanted to promise somebody as they work their way through the company, and really laying a foundation for a very positive experience. And then them going on to work at a specific location and having experiences that might have been counter to what was portrayed up front. And I think it's something that recruiters experience, hiring managers experience it from time to time. We all know the first impression is so important. And then when the execution and follow through on the back end doesn't match that, that glow from the beginning, it's a really, really frustrating situation to be in. It's also a tremendous opportunity to learn about what needs to be improved at the operational level, right? And so getting everybody on board, particularly the leaders throughout an organization, on board with taking a look at an individual employee's experience from start to finish, picking it apart and finding the opportunities for improvement. Like, where were those expectations misaligned? Why didn't we follow through and execute on this certain thing that we told them we were going to when we were interviewing them and when we decided to hire them? Why didn't that go as planned? Really digging in and picking that apart and using it to leverage the experience and using it to, you know, improve and be the company that you really wanted to be for that candidate that you were interviewing. So that's something that we definitely focus on. I work on every single day. And I think it's really important and a huge learning opportunity above all else.
That is huge. So you're taking the culture, which is not tangible, right? And you're connecting whatever that culture is for the company that they want it to be. And it's communicated during the interview, but then the first few weeks of like onboarding, and then so that culture sustains. That's where you get the name Sustain Network, and then it goes into the leadership development. If I'm understanding that right, so that's I think if I'll play not the devil's advocate, but if I'm an owner of a management company and I got 50 hotels or even a franchise restaurant company, or I have whatever, and I have a certain culture that I want to expand. And, you know, even though I might be based in one place, it's really hard to do to have that culture be experienced at both places if there's like 5 or 7 different states where the properties are, right? So having if I'm the owner and I do hear this as a general resistance or complaint, and the fact that they use bandwidth as an example. So the idea of they don't have enough bandwidth to do that themselves. And the challenge is they're hired by owners or franchisees to do that. So and I'm not asking this, but one challenge is that if they don't have the bandwidth, admitting that it's so important to do what you just walked us through, which is communicating the culture and experiencing it. I encourage all company owners, especially if you're an employer of multiple properties and in the service industry, just admit it, that your bandwidth is tight, but this is so important, especially the 2-3 weeks of the first, the onboarding experience. It's okay to hire somebody from outside your company. It's okay to admit that you can't do it all. We're all in a very unique position in the service industries and even retail, which is we're doing more with less. It's all the numbers there. It's rough. And so
if I
Tucker a call.
To that, yeah, let me respond to that real quick, Adam. Something you said in the beginning was culture is not very tangible, and I would argue it's actually a lot more tangible than a lot of people would say it is. And just to use an example, almost every restaurant that I've worked with has a way to track and manage customer reviews. Almost none of those restaurants actually share that feedback in a tangible way with their team. And to respond to the bandwidth aspect, so a lot of area managers, I was one, and a lot of area managers that I know spend a huge amount of time on the road. A way to kind of get some of that bandwidth back is maybe take a day where you're not traveling to all of the stores and having 45-minute interactions and then saying, all right, guys, peace out, I'm a bounce out. Maybe invest some of that time into sifting through those customer reviews and putting together tangible action items in response, which is a super practical strategy that I'm very dumbfounded how often people are just unwilling to do that, right? Until you're able to explain how to turn those reviews into money, which there are case studies available to quantify that, right? So there are a lot of myths and misnomers in our industry, but just as an example of some ways to get some of that time back and reinvest it back into the team, right?
It's huge. And I think so Ted, I'll ask you real quick, and Kylie also, so love that you just said that about the tangible, because if we in our industry, and I just wrote like a whole like newsletter opinion about this, and I haven't published it yet, but I'll say that we're if we're in the service industry, hotels, restaurants, travel, whatever, right? We're taught to serve. We're taught to anticipate the needs of the guest. We're taught to keep things safe and sanitized and clean, and our buildings and our areas and our people and team build. But I'll tell you what we generally have not been trained to do very well. That is to create a product, something tangible, right? And that's you just brought up that Tucker by saying by challenging that, and you're absolutely right, because if you can take a customer review process to review it and create call it an SOP, a standard operating procedure, actually put it in the job description of your area director or whomever, to say like, and then actually train that and create something tangible that says these are the 3 things that you have to do at every visit, right? And it's tracked and measured, rather than I think that it's become very casual to co-visit a property and to just kind of check the box. I think that we can do much better. So Ted, let me ask you real quick. So Ted, by the way, and we're going to get to this in a minute, Ted and I were just talking, and Ted is thinking about, he's just got a couple great ideas about starting his own podcast. And so it's the same thing. It's the same thing as like, how do I get this idea that's not tangible and to create something? You can create a company. You can start a YouTube page. You can start something, and to get an idea and turn it into reality. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And our topic of influencers, I think, are the ones that if you're influencing something, you actually are doing something that somebody's watching or observing or experiencing that's influencing them in hopefully a positive way. And so Ted and I have been in the world of franchising and hotels and being a general manager and those type of roles for quite a while. And so usually we're pretty SOP driven. But here's a question for you, Ted. And how often are you or your company going through the existing SOPs and being like, hey, I think that we need to refresh these? If we're talking about the ever-changing times that we're in right now with the emerging workforce or whoever it might be. Are we going through those SOPs and stuff like that?
I mean, from my perspective, there's sort of the corporate SOPs that are driven down from a corporate office to me. And to be honest with those, I'm not necessarily scrutinizing those, whether they're outdated or not. I know for me, just the culture that I try and create at each place that I am, that's something that I'm always looking, whether it's relevant, the things that I'm saying and doing, are they working? And I think you have to be sort of brave enough that, I've had enough good ideas and that put into practice just were terrible when we tried to put them into some sort of SOP or some sort of culture. So I think you have to be willing to throw things away, but at the same time, when something really has an opportunity to work, you also have to be able to stick with something, even though you might not be seeing the fruit of that labor right away. Sometimes it takes a little time for that to take hold. So
Yeah.
I think with any sort of thing like that, I think you have to be flexible and honest enough to realize when your ideas aren't working, but also be able to stick with something long enough to make sure you're giving it a chance.
Yeah, I think all.
I don't know if that answered your question or not, though.
Yeah, no, you did, and I like how this conversation's going because it's kind of flowing into each other and the things that we do. So you made me think of the term of, well, all right, if I'm like your area director, like you're the general manager, the anxiety that I get is when my manager or the owner of the company or whatever says, well, what if Ted gets hit by a bus? That's what we always say, like, well, then we're going to have to replace him. Well, what are they going to have? How are they going to be able to replace Ted that does such a good job? He's trying to do X, Y, and Z. Is there anything on a piece of paper that says that this is what Ted does every day? And that's where a lot of that kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of boring stuff, but it's stuff that's written down and checked off the list of going through the motions. And so I'm going to say that word again, tangible. I think if it's something tangible that you do have an idea that does stick, Ted, I think it's really cool to figure out a way to get that idea out there, but also document it in a way. And that's kind of what this is. We started this podcast now, almost a year ago, and I still don't really know what I'm doing, but we found a way to, like, I was like, do I need a microphone? I don't even know. Like, I should just use my phone or my laptop. Very clunky. We kind of learned as we went, but eventually what this became and what it is a documentation. Like, these are recordings and these are assets that we and you all will have like an MP4 video of this, what we're talking about. And so if you are talking about a mentor or something like that, you can use this as a way to say thank you. And so I like the topic of keep on moving forward and creating things, but also documenting them, because it's it doesn't have to be boring SOPs. It could be something, though. And so I'm blabbering on. I wanted to mention Kylie's service training before we get to Ted's podcast idea, because I do want to talk about how I will say simple it was to learn how to do this. This is our 44th episode, and the amount of time that it takes is so much less and very inexpensive. I was lucky enough to have my brother that was like an accountability coach, right? So he was like, do this. You need to be more consistent. I was like, all right, what do I do? I'm going to take pictures of my trees every day, and that'll be my consistent thing. He goes, no, you need to do something better. And so Kylie and I, in a previous conversation, I told, and also Tucker, I just mentioned to over the phone with Tucker, was the last like awesome training that I went through was like over 25 years ago. I was working at the Marriott at the airport in Orlando, managed by Interstate Hotels, and they were just awesome to work for. And they had fish training. You guys know fish? So for our millions of fans out there, if you don't know it, look it up, fish with an exclamation point. And it's based around the having fun at work with the Seattle Fish Company, whatever, on the pier there where they throw fish. You may have seen it on YouTube. They like, hey, I'll have a fish, and they throw it, and then you buy it. That's the retail fish. And they created a philosophy, and they called it fish. And then Interstate Hotels spent money. They were like, hey, let's have them over like 2 or 3 days. and it was awesome. And yeah, it kind of like expanded our teamwork, and we were all making fun of each other and forcing each other to have fun. And we had like fake fish that stuffed animal fish that we would throw at each other and stuff, and it was fun. But a lot of those, the reality is, a lot of those budgets are have dwindled. That does cost money to get somebody come in from the outside to come and do a training like that. Kylie, you have a huge passion for doing what you do and for your service, so much that you created your own training. And I remember when I was looking at it, at some of your stuff that you have online, I see your face on there. And if I didn't know you and I see you going through the training, and let's say you were where you are, but also this is something that's given virtually to maybe a company in California, with employees, I would be thinking like you're like a celebrity. Like, that's how much I look up to people that like a trainer. You know what I mean? Like, you created this training called Service with a Smile. So what inspired you to make your own training?
I have, believe it or not, nearly 2 decades of hospitality experience. I started working at 15. Monday was my birthday. I just hit the 35 mark, hence the birthday post in my school group.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
20 years is a lot of time to look over a lot of different holes and processes and changes and decades and industry trends. And I think there's a couple of thoughts that have crossed my path of just the circle of conversation we've had. But to answer your question directly, is just from my learning experiences, 10 years of Ritz-Carlton, from server assistant to a front office manager of operations to international director of a pre-opening luxury resort, Forbes' most anticipated opening that's now 2nd year consecutively of 5-star award, which we're really proud of,
Wow.
to general manager by 30. And that was a privately owned ranch resort out in West Texas, 32 rooms, but 13,000 acres. So there was a private FBO airport and a retail general store and a beautiful spa and equine and horses and restaurants. So you have a wine program and an art class. I mean, when everyone says the term wear lots of hats, I say wear lots of shoes, but you get the whole concept. Through wearing those hats and shoes and accessories is a lot of different perspectives from the ground up. And I've found that, yes, it's the initiative that I've taken to try to climb the ladder and go from city hotel to island resort to in and out of all of these different properties, rather than staying in one spot and hoping someone to retire so I can get their job. I went every 2 to 3 years, I would hop and climb and on a more expedited route. So I got my bachelor's degree as a pastry chef for my associate's degree, and then online for bachelor's of restaurant and hospitality. I did that because I didn't want to go to school for 4 years and sit in a building. I wanted to finish in 3 years. So I found a way to expedite it. So
Nice.
same career trajectory. So from school, from work, from life and love of travel and just experiences in general. Tucker used the word experience, and I love looking at things as the experience journey. There's holes in every experience, and I like to see the bright side, but I can also find some of the shady spots that are missing by poking holes in them to then fill it with light so it can operate more effectively and more positively. So with Service with a Smile programming, I said, what if there's baseline of positivity that leads to productivity that will lead to a boost of your bottom line? The third P is profitability. As you all know from your extensive experience as ownership and higher level leadership, it's all knowing your numbers, facts are in your figures. I was coming in as a service provider who does leading of other people who are passionate to help people, love helping people and love to smile. But surface level, people only see that smile and that sunshine. Kylie Ray of Sunshine, it's cute, but there's oomph behind it. It's a very powerful star in the sky that everyone relies on all day to be able to operate all of their businesses. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
I love that. I heard you say you fill gaps with light. Is that what you say? I love that. I think that's great.
I feel good with the process, because there are processes of what Tucker said with the transactional, the functional piece that has to happen. Maybe like you're saying with Ted about the SOPs and the processes have to happen. I mean, for Ritz-Carlton, back when I was working at the company, there were 82 properties across the world. And to have that brand so consistent, there's so many standards that I still to this day live my life by. But looking at other brands in different industries, there's different ways to approach different people and different service-based companies. And I put it together just kind of all, not holistically, but just all the pieces together, saying more of the people taking care of people philosophies and trying to shine a different light on things. Like maybe you're right, but maybe we're all right because we're all looking at it at a different point of view. So to kind of loop your question into the SOP question, is our hospitality industry is known for turnover. So to quantify training and all of our efforts collectively on this call is it's over 70% of turnover in our industry. That's major quantifiable data that if you can impact people who are more positive and more productive, impacting your bottom line, you're going to want to impact your people or influence your people by investing in them to be the best that they can be. And by doing that, they will provide more service for each other, be more supportive, help the client or guest have a better experience that brings all of that back to your financial cycle. So with those SOPs, can you include with your high turnover impact to lower your turnover, but also with your new fresh eyes, if there are missing pieces in that employee experience journey, when you can solidify that journey and invite that new person who has a new set of eyes to come with not just a lifelong learner perspective, to be there, a sponge sitting in the back office watching boring videos for 2 days straight, but say you're a valued team member who maybe is not the subject matter expert yet because you haven't been here 10 years like the rest of us, but we clearly had you go through the selection process and you have succeeded. You're part of the team. Can you share your perspective and help as you're going through these processes and ask why? Not just me as Kylie Ray of Sunshine Service with a Smile coming in to poke holes, but inviting your team to poke holes in the process too. So it's not just Ted running the whole organization or like corporate trying to figure out how to manage hundreds of hotels across the world or restaurants, et cetera. But being able to say like each person has their own contribution to the team and start that as a culture at the very beginning. They'll start seeing that you them. Doesn't mean that their ideas are right. Like Ted said, sometimes you have ideas and you're like, it doesn't work. But I think
true.
It's a tangible takeaway that gets the buy-in and still drives the culture in a whole other way.
Well, it's huge what you just walked us through. And let me tell you why I think it's huge. You have owners that own buildings and they hire management companies, or maybe they're the franchisee, or maybe it's just an investor. I mean, the conversation of turnover costs more money. I'm done with that conversation, or the question that exists. It's so quantifiable especially when a leader, like a manager, leaves unexpectedly, right? And if you're the leader at a property doing everything that you were just talking about, Kylie, creating a culture, and you got somebody like Tucker there sustaining you, and you get Ted that's creating like some sort of like training in order to help that message, and then one of you leave, it costs money, and it can be a lot of money, and if it happens again, it's like double and triple and all that. And so that is the answer, I think, in the next 10, 15 years of our entire industry. Owners are hurting right now with these fixed costs. We just did a whole show on how fixed costs like insurance and taxes and debt service and mortgage interest rates, they're all creeping up into all of these budgets that we would like to have to create programs and to train. And so when I start thinking about my life and career in hospitality, the most amazing, when I was most loyal, it was when I was having a somewhat high frequency of something unique, like call it a training or something to look forward to. Be like, oh, I'm going to get invited to the corporate office like next week or whatever. I'm going to, what do I got to do? I'm nervous, but I'm excited. Or maybe it's like a general manager's conference, like with Marriott, they do every year. Well, it's something that we all look forward to, but that's not a high frequency if you're looking forward to that one thing a year. And so when I think about Ted and loving how much I enjoyed working with you, Ted, when you say that, like, hey, you're managing a hotel and you got like, I would like to be one of your employees. You know what I mean? Because when you said, like, hey, I'm thinking about like a podcast or something, like, and you brought up Drunk History as an example. So Kylie and Tucker, you're laughing. Do you know Drunk History on that show?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a it's hilarious, and that's this kind of the sense of humor that Ted and I share. And so the idea of well, let me just ask Ted, if you want to start like a little podcast and you have a meeting room that is empty, do you think you could start something at the hotel? I mean, is that something you're thinking about doing?
I haven't really thought about doing it at my hotel. Doing it at a hotel probably, would be a good space. Just real quick, I just want to go back for a second though, Adam, and just sort of compound on what you were talking about and what Kylie was talking about, and just with the two of us when we work together. And one of the things, throughout my career that I've told, I don't know how many employees that didn't necessarily get along with each other, that, hey, you don't have to like each other, but you do have to respect each other. And, in my experience, I've come to the conclusion, at least for myself and only myself, the places where I've loved to work have always been the places where I really like the people around me. I don't want to just respect my boss. I want to like my boss. I don't want to just respect the people I work with. I genuinely want to like them and have a good time when I'm around them. So, that's certainly a hard thing. And there's always sort of, that doesn't always work out, but in the situations that I've been, like, it's really when I like doing what I'm doing and being around the people that I'm around.
I'm glad you mentioned
but as
that.
far as as far as sort of a podcast idea and certainly using sort of empty space that we have, I certainly, if somebody came to me and wanted to use a space for that, absolutely I would do that. I know, I don't know, Adam, if we worked together when the group was there, but years ago we had a group of gamers that would come in from like midnight to 6 a.m. and they would basically hook their consoles up to our big TV and they would play games, and they just required like a case of Red Bull, and it was like 20 guys that would show up and basically be there all night playing video games.
So that's fun so if I was really like if I was like a front desk agent working there and they were there, that would be exciting for me. And that would give me like another kind of like a burst of energy to be like, oh, they're in there gaming and they're doing that and I can hear them. So let me ask you guys this. So the whole influencer thing, right? Okay, so I think it is one, we're all needing to work, right? We're not financially independent, right? We need a job. We need to go pay our bills and whatever we're into. We're helping each other. We're trying to help each other, and we're creating things, right? Well, I do know that, I don't know what the percentage is, but from the perspective of like a teenager, right? The reality is what they consider an influencer is who they are seeing, right? And they're maybe it's someone into fitness, maybe it's someone into makeup, maybe it's someone that's into design and clothing. Well, what they're figuring out around those ages are the things that they love, right? The things that they really enjoy. They're not going to watch somebody that is putting on, designing a new dress or something like that, or new shoes, or if they're not into shoes, right? So they're discovering the things that, and then when they get a little spark that says, maybe I can do that, I think a lot of those sparks of what you just said about being around people that you like to be around, doing something that you love, it helps absolutely a younger person kind of walk towards their purpose as they're trying to find meaning in life. And I would say 99% of the youth or the emerging workforce of today, this is my opinion now, they need to work, but they also have an interest that they actually think, which I believe they should think, that they can create something on their own that's aligned with their passion. And so the idea of, I'll just say, a TikTok channel, and if they're into, I don't know, because I'm bald, I'll say hair gel, if they're into like hair and some sort of hair design or whatever, or spa treatments and things like that. The fact that these influencers have tools to get their thoughts out there, and I'll say their personal brand, I just know that, one, hotels and restaurants, music venues, attractions, tourism in general, even the airlines, these are generally attract people that share what Ted just said. It's not just about respecting people. It's about being around people that you actually enjoy being around, And so if a younger person says, I love X, and I see a influencer on social media and they're doing X and I watch that person, it's probably a pretty good chance that that person that they're watching has a full-time job. Okay, they're if they're on their own or whatever, but they're not just like making millions of dollars. Not all of them. I know there's ways to do that. And so if they do have a need to get a job, working in hospitality is fun. And I think that there's a way, and I think there's big barriers to this, but let me ask you, and as kind of like a last question, but with how we use our space in restaurants and hotels, I mean, we have buildings, right? And there's 2,100 Hampton Inns in the United States. Okay. So let's just use that as an example. The average meeting space at a Hampton Inn is like 600 or 700 square feet. Well, that can hold like 20 or 25 people very comfortably. And they rarely get used. They get used as an upgrade if somebody wants some extra space. And so what's holding us back from embracing this whole influencer culture about creating opportunities? So if I'm a front desk agent and I do like shoes, okay, and I watch people on my on social media that are into shoes, and I watch that. What's holding me back from having a full-time job at a hotel or restaurant and just doing my own thing? Like, even if I don't need any space, I think there's some legal concerns, that would be concerned, but you can get over that kind of stuff. But so if I'm there at a front desk and I got my phone, if I'm checking into a hotel, and I'll just use it as an example and I'll throw it out to you guys, and they say, hey, I'm Kylie, I work at the front desk, and I have my little channel here, and I interview hotel guests sometimes, and I just want to ask, maybe where are you coming from? Why'd you choose us? Can I record you? I would love that. I would absolutely love that. And I would say, absolutely, ask me a couple questions. If I didn't love that, I would just be like, yeah, I'm not into that. But I know that there are some things holding us back from allowing Kylie that works at the front desk of that hotel from doing that. So I don't think it happens very often, but I would tell you, if I was in that environment and I was allowed to do something like that, I would be loyal. I would be so happy. I would come into work on time every day. And I'd be so excited to work for a place that allowed me to do stuff. So I'm going to throw that out there. Have you ever seen something like that? Jump in.
I'll jump in. So I haven't necessarily seen something like that. I certainly think in the hospitality industry, we've always been a little bit slow to embrace sort of individuality. I think that's certainly changing. But I don't know how many years, you know, it was sort of
How is it changing,
industry
Ted?
standard. Like, what's that?
How is it changing? How is it changing?
How is it changing? I was just gonna
Individuality,
say for,
yeah.
well, I mean, for so many years, you know, working for like a brand, you know, you couldn't have a beard. You could only have a mustache. You know, there were no, if you had visible tattoos, like you weren't in hospitality, you were in something else. Where I think now, I think the industry as a whole is embracing a little bit more that, you know, you can have a beard or, you know, even piercings and tattoos. You know, it's almost a minority now that you see people without tattoos. So, you know, I think some of that is changing. I think moving it to where, you know, there's sort of allowing someone, you know, who's working there to sort of film people, you know, or interview them. I can imagine a brand would be a little leery of something like that, but I certainly think, you know, with the younger generation, allowing a little bit more leeway of individuality is really going to be important for us to get those younger people into the industry. It's not the same where everything needs to be cookie cutter anymore. People want to express themselves a little bit more.
That's huge. I love that. Love that comment. Tucker, Kylie, any comments on that?
So many comments, so many thoughts. To piggyback on it, there's so many different brands. If you think of, again, with the umbrella, you have the Marriott International. Then you have, like, I always play in my luxury world of sports because that's what I've mastered, right? So playing in luxury makes me more want to cringe when it's like, come to a guest and put a phone in their face and be like, what do you do for a living? There is a popular place in Dallas that's a high-end luxury shopping area called Highland Park Village. It's beautiful, and it's just probably one of the most high-end. I know in Arizona, there's a lot of places in Scottsdale that's very high-end and elevated too. I don't know as much of that geography. But in Highland Park Village, you can see Bugattis and all of the fancy cars and the elites of financial success and wealth just walking down for a cup of coffee. The Starbucks, I've met billionaires just going to meet at the local coffee shop, just in conversations, but it was an organic conversation, like waiting for a napkin, not like in your face. But there is a gentleman, if you do YouTube, and I don't know his name, but he goes up to people driving their fancy cars. Excuse me. What do you do?
Oh, I've seen that.
How much is the most money you've ever made? Do you mind telling the audience like some wonderful things that will impact your life? As he's the influencer, and he's probably just fine financially doing that full time, and he's known for it. And some people will roll their window up and be like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
It's a public space, right? If it was in one of Tucker's restaurants and you're trying to create an experience that's really intentionally polished, like you've invested in hiring a consultant to help you with defining those touch points that are seamless to have a beautiful, elegant experience of a luxury setting. Even if it's like being from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, it doesn't have to always be luxury. It can be like mom and pop shop. My first job was at my stepbrother's family-owned restaurant, and I was a little hostess, like server person. Not even a server.
Let me flip that around real quick then. So the whole idea of influencing and being like on a video, right? Maybe it's not the person that works there, because I get that might be a little bit, I mean, it's going to depend on a lot. But thinking from the perspective of having the opportunity to maybe be interviewed, or maybe to if I'm a management company and I'm based in Atlanta, and whenever the area manager, like you mentioned, Tucker, like a restaurant or hotel, whenever the area manager did come over, maybe for 15 minutes, they do record something and be like, hey, employee XYZ, Kylie, you're working at the front desk, Ted, you're bartender. Come over here real quick and just tell me about, you know, anything funny happened last week or whatever, and tell your story. and then they're connected, right? They're connected with that tangible thing that might be missing, and they're being asked about their life, and they're getting paid attention to, and they're on video. I mean, of course, they would need to approve that or whatever. And maybe the management company that normally isn't like the brand, but we all know, like all the McDonald's, there's some management companies and franchisees that have like 400 McDonald's, right? And they have, you'll never know their name, right? But they do have a culture. It's inspired by McDonald's, just the way that it's inspired by Marriott and Hilton and Kimpton and all that. But if I saw that on a job application or a job description, I am thinking about the people that are coming into the workforce. And like, I just think our job descriptions right now suck. I think they're boring. And in most of the industries, it's like, can you put on there that maybe you have a chance to get interviewed by your boss once a week or something like that? It's like, oh, I just think they're boring. Tucker, you got any thoughts on all that?
I think Kylie and Ted have both hit the nail on the head. I really liked what Kylie said about the intentionality of the content that you're trying to create. So to answer your initial question, why aren't more people in the restaurant and hospitality industry hopping on the influencer bandwagon? And I'd say it's because of one word. It's because of fear. It is really difficult to execute good content that actually works. And for every successful influencer you see, there are hundreds of thousands of people who have created content thinking that it's going to get millions of views, and it goes nowhere. And worse, the content isn't executed very well, and it actually damages the image of the brand. That's the big fear, I think. A really good example of a brand that's nailing this, if you follow Doug Toley, like Dough Toley, on Instagram, TikTok, he works for Papa John's. He's just a general manager, and he's got almost 750,000 followers because he makes pizzas and has motivational speeches at the same time. And Papa John's hopped all over that. And I think it was more of a ask for forgiveness rather than permission situation. I think he just started doing it, but because it was executed well, Papa John's was like, why don't you keep doing this? It's getting a lot of viewers, and it's just
to your point, because it was executed well. So he was taking time to do the video, but he was also cutting it up. He was making it look somewhat professional and creating his own thing. That's a really good point, because it could be a negative.
Oh, I think that's why you don't see more of it, because it very much could be a negative and damage the brand.
Yeah. That's good. I think, so let me just, we can start to finish up here, but I will tell you that I always considered myself creative, but growing up in this industry, I wasn't always, that honestly wasn't always embraced. Like my ideas, and also I had fear. I was intimidated if I didn't come from a huge, I don't have a 4-year degree. So I don't have like all formal education, where I wasn't able to always talk the talk of like financials and stuff growing up in the industry, but I was always in those meetings. So I wouldn't ask questions because I would have fear that I would look stupid or whatever. Right. So, and so but I always had ideas, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to say this happened all the time, but when I was a younger person and a younger manager, I did present some ideas sometimes, and I probably didn't do a very good job at presenting my idea. It probably came out just like you said, Tucker, with like a not good content. It probably was like, why are we doing this? Why can't we do this better? Right. And so that's probably how it sounded. But in my mind, I was like, I had a great idea. I would like to present it to you. But eventually over time, I stopped, not stopped, but I slowed down on taking an idea and trying to, turning it into reality. And so that was the big change that happened with this particular podcast last year. And I did have somebody, my brother, shout out to you, Matt. Reach out to Matt at Agile Game Changers. Give you a little shout out, bro. He's basically an accountability coach for the past, 18, 24 months. Didn't call it that. But I asked him, I said, I want to start getting my ideas out here. I want to create something where people can come and talk about, give them a voice that probably isn't out there as much, thinking about myself as a younger person, right? So to create an environment where you're sharing your thoughts, and I find you all to be extremely inspirational. And so the more visuals and the more audio, like listening to you and sharing that with the world, particularly younger people maybe that are thinking about this as an industry, I think they need to see more of it. And so thank you for that. And I'm going to leave it by saying, Ted, or anybody listening. Okay, so I'll go through what I was buying. I did eventually buy this microphone. Okay, I bought this microphone. It was like $49. Okay, I already had a laptop that I use for work. I have this Logitech, camera. It's probably an upgraded version of the typical camera, but I don't use the laptop camera. I use a Logitech, and I want to say that was probably about $79. Some of the times I do record just on my phone, and it comes out great. I started using Loom Video. Loom is awesome, and it's free. If you want more space and more video, you could spend like $29 a month, I think it is. But the big game changer for me was learning StreamYard here. So I always wondered, like, why is somebody going live? I really wanted to do it live. I don't know why. I wanted to do it live. It was probably for my own accountability. I was like, if I'm not doing it live, then I'm going to probably put it off. I might procrastinate. Be like, oh, Matt or whoever, I'm busy. Let's just do it next week. But if we're doing it live, I was like, shoot, I got to do this because everyone's going to know that it's not. And so it was a way to hold myself accountable. And I think about it now. But StreamYard is also, there is a free version of StreamYard. And so I am paying like, again, $29 a month or something like that to allow us to have more whatever sites that it's connected to. So I think that you can do like LinkedIn Live for free, maybe YouTube, but we're going live on LinkedIn, YouTube, like 2 channels on YouTube, and then 2 channels on Facebook. And I haven't figured out how to do Instagram yet, but that is available to do that. TikTok is also available, but it takes a little extra time. So the expense is not huge. If you want to get your voice out here, you got an idea, come back. And I would invite anybody that's watching this, come back on this show and we will help you create your own podcast if you want. Tucker, you're doing stuff that I haven't been able to figure out yet. So I'm learning by just watching you. Kylie, you wrote an entire training and we're in this school community together. So I'm learning from you. Ted, I've learned from you for 15 years. And the idea of being able to do something with you again, even though we're far away geographically, I'm all jazzed up about that. So that's, you might not be. You might be like, no, thanks.
Ted, did you choose your topic? What is your podcast on?
I'm sorry?
What is your topic?
That's what I'm sort of trying to work out. So, to sort of Adam's point with having an accountability coach and his brother, one of the things that, I think is most important beyond sort of the microphones and cameras is just having something that is consistently interesting. That's sort of the challenge to me is something that's going to excite me on a regular basis to want to do and have people listen to, and not just, you're 1.2 million, Adam. I'm a little worried I will have 1.2 people watching my podcast. So
maybe it's slightly
what I'm
less
still
than
sort of working at.
We go from like hundreds of thousands to like hundreds of millions. I mean, it's a big mess,
Yeah.
Well, let's you guys are invited to let's do this again sometime. I do some recording and then we go live anyway, but I just wanted to sincerely thank you. We're going to end it here, okay? For spending your time. Everyone's busy. It means a lot to me personally that the three of you took your time to be on here with me. It's just I love listening to your voices and seeing your faces, and I know how much it means to our industry to see people like yourselves in the business having fun, meeting each other. Please look everyone up on LinkedIn and Instagram. Kylie Ray of Sunshine. You'd said Instagram. You're all over that. Ted Thaddeus Borsuk on LinkedIn. Tucker Bascom on the Sustain Network, also on LinkedIn. Look me up, Adam Zimbrewski. You can email me at adam@hospiamo.com. Thank you. We're going to end it up here. Thanks for spending an hour and 10 minutes with me.
Thank you.
You want to do it again
Thank you.
sometime?
Thank you very much for having
Definitely.
us.
Yeah. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Shout out to my big bro. Thank you, bro. Love you. Hope your flight is all right. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.